Back everyone to Auction for the Soul. This week's Parshat is Parshat Behar. Typically Behar is read as a joining Parshat Bechukotai, which is the last two parshiot of the book of Vayikra, the third book of the book of Leviticus. This year we have the pleasure of spending more time on just this one particular parsha without the distraction of the other. But before I begin, lest I forget, this week's class is dedicated for the refuah shelema of Chana bat Sima Feiga by Daniella and Andrew Stern. Thank you so much for the sponsorship. The Rabbanit should have a refuah shelema el narafanala very quickly, very soon. We should only hear great things. Okay. Parshat Behar is a continuation of where we left off last week. Last week, if you missed the class, we spoke a little bit about the idea of the Mekalel, the one who comes out and blasphemizes God's name. And in this week's Parsha, the Parsha begins with Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai Lemor. God comes to Moshe and he tells him about these laws of Mount Sinai. Daber el Bnei Israel, speak to the Jewish people, Va'amarta alehem, ki tavo el ha'aretz asher ani noten lachem, ve'shavta ha'aretz Shabbat laHashem. When you come to the land of Israel, you shall, that God is giving to us, the land shall rest as a Shabbat to God. In the same way that we have every seventh day of the week is Shabbat, we stop doing our work, we pull ourselves away from all the distractions of the work week. We have a 7-year Shabbat. We say that every 7 years is called Shmita, and that is like a sabbatical. The word sabbatical actually comes from this concept over here, that every 7 years a professor has a right of taking off time to go and spend some time on developing himself and getting out of the rigor of the repetitive nature of our work and so on and so forth. Imagine every 7 years you could stop doing what you do and have 1 year to vacation, reflect, recalibrate who you are and so on and so forth. Sounds amazing. Okay, and then the Torah continues and it tells us that Shesh Shanim Tizra Sedcha, 6 years, we're talking about an agricultural society, 6 years you go ahead and you sow your fields, that means you're planting seeds, V'shesh Shanim Tizmor Karmecha, and then 6 years you could prune your vineyard, V'asavta et tuata, and then gather its produce. However, B'shna HaShvi'id, in the 7th year, Shabbat Shabbatoni, right? La'aretz, Shabbat LaHashem. You should have a Shabbaton for the land. Stop doing the work that you're doing, and Sadcha lo tizra v'karmecha lo tizmor. Don't sow, don't prune. You're leaving everything as is. And everyone has the right of coming to your field and taking from whatever they want. Okay, that is the Parsha. But we got to ask some questions over here. And the question is, why is it, with this particular halacha, does the Torah need to tell me that Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Bahar Sinai Lemor? What do you mean? We just spent, I'd say about, almost 25 chapters of Torah, okay, 27 chapters of Torah, just in this book over here, right? And we've been talking about all sorts of laws, and there's zero mention anywhere about God coming down and telling us the laws at Sinai. Where else were these laws coming from? And why is it that over here now, for whatever reason, the Torah tells us, oh, by the way, FYI, these are the laws that Moshe told us, that Hashem told Moshe at Har Sinai. So we're asking, I suspect, the reason why we're going through this particular concept over here is like this. Let's look at what Rashi says. Rashi says, and this is not my question, this is Rashi's question. He says, Bahar Sinai, Ma inyan Shmita etzel Har Sinai. What is the relationship between Shmita and the laws of the 7th year, right? Kol ha-mitzvot nemru b'Sinai. Weren't all the laws told at Mount Sinai? This is like a very important Jewish concept. As Jews, as Orthodox Jews, as B'nai Torah, as people who are thinking and learning, which all of you fit, by the way, that description. I'm not sure if you think of yourselves as being B'nai Torah, but you are if you're coming to a class. You're the students of the Torah, and therefore you're the offspring of Torah. And the question is, well, every halacha has to find its root at Sinai, at Mount Sinai. So if it's not from there, well, who has the right to enact a new law? So why here? Why specifically remind us that here in the Torah's ability or desire to teach us about the laws of Shmita, do you have to remind me that all the laws came from Har Sinai? Obviously, they all came from Har Sinai. Ela, ma Shmita nemru koloteo perotea v'tegdotea misinai, av kula nemru koloteim v'tegdoteim misinai. Rashi tells us that just the reason why it's here is to tell you that just like all the general principles and all its finer details are all stated from Sinai. And all of them were there, all the general principles were there, all the details were from Sinai. And that is why, even including the curses, everything that is connected to Sinai is coming from God. Don't think for 1 second that this is coming from man. This wasn't a rabbinic enactment. This is specifically a Torah principle that is the Oraita, which is coming from God, not coming from man. Now we see this, and it's interesting because so much of the Parshat that we read this week in Behar, the idea of Dror, the idea of Yovel, every 50 years, all the slaves go free, all the land goes back. We're talking about building a society that has some feeling of equality in it. I'm a very big believer in capitalism. I think capitalism is one of the best systems. But when capitalism is taken to an extreme, it creates lots of problems. You have people today who've inherited money that's intergenerational funding money, right? They don't have to do work. They're collecting rent. They're not creating anything new. And they're not sharing what they have with the people that need it. So now you actually have a situation where there's disproportionate wealth, again, like we had in medieval times, and there's no way of climbing yourself out of it. Of course, you could invent something, you could be one of those super people that are brilliant, and you come up with a new invention, and you have a new startup, and you sell it, and you do your thing, and you could break out of where you came from. But for most people, you're stuck in a certain socioeconomic situation. The Torah is not interested in that. The Torah has a hybrid system that is a little bit of capitalism and a little bit of socialism. And where it draws the line is that you think, they tell you if you're in real estate, buy real estate, they stop making it. There's only a limited amount of real estate on planet Earth, and own it. That's the best way to protect your wealth. This is true, but we as Jews recognize that resources are important, but they also often get in the way of allowing society to develop themselves. What happens to a society which no longer feels the need to be creative? Let's use Israel as an example. It's a 75-year history. When the Brits gave the land of Israel to the Jews, you know what they said? They're going to die. There's no water in Israel. They can't grow the crops. You can't do anything there. It's sand dunes, rock, stone, desert. Who wants this land? These people are crazy. They're surrounded by 5 armies. There's no resources here. You know what's going to happen? They're going to die. Who comes? Holocaust survivors, people with nothing, emaciated people that could barely stand up. They come from Europe. They come back to their homeland that they've been dying to come back to for so long, and they fight against these armies. They take a land that should have died. Like Mark Twain said, who wants Jerusalem? It's nothing but stick and stone. Who wants it? You go today to Israel, it's a paradise. It's an oasis in the desert. It's stunning. How did that happen? It happens because there's a special beracha, a special blessing of Jews living in the land and working in the land of Israel. And while there are laws that are there today, we keep Shmita today in Israel, right? We leave the land and we sell the land and we do all kinds of things, to keep the laws of Shmita in the land of Israel. But at its core, right, there's a miracle that's happening here. And the miracle is something that you and I can't explain. The reason why the Rav Hirsch says that, the reason why we were mentioning this idea of Har Sinai over here is because we just heard the Mekalel. We just heard someone who blasphemized God. And it looked like from the Pesukim over there that the rabbis and the Chachamim at the time did not really know how to apply the law. And therefore, the Torah's got to tell us that this law was just taught to the people, right? So it seems as if, Ki'ilu, maybe, hey, the Mekalel, they didn't know the law over there. So, and that was from the rabbis. Maybe right now, the rabbis just they opened the Pandora's box, you gave the rabbis the power, now everything's from the rabbis. So the Torah's going out of its way to say, hey, that was a unique episode, the Mekalel. We didn't think that we would need to teach that law so quickly. But know that it was taught at Sinai, it was just forgotten, it was obscure. Now we're going to go reiterate this idea that, hey, by the way, everything you're going to read in this week's parasha is connected to God. Another reason for it is, many of the other laws are simple. Like it doesn't say that, Shabbat, these were the laws of Shabbat and it was taught by Sinai. Because you and I understand the value of Shabbat today more than any other generation before us. Maybe the people that were farmers in agricultural societies understood Shabbat in a way that was more profound than we did, right? But today we all recognize, wow, you guys, how many people do you tell, I spend 25 hours off the grid, nothing, I'm not touching the internet, no phone, no TV, I sit with my family. None of my kids have devices at the table. We sit at a table for 3 or 4 hours. We have this delicious meal, and we're sharing ideas. We're speaking to one another. We're sharing jokes, going through the week. How beautiful is that? Who has that today? How many parents, my friends who don't keep Shabbat, they tell me how they struggle because their children are so lost in the world of the internet, and they're so connected and addicted to their devices that they're unable to pull themselves away from that reality. And here we have this thing called Shabbat. Of course, Shabbat is divine because we recognize its divinity. But maybe these laws, which are more economic laws, these are agricultural laws, Shmita, Yovel, slaves going free, the laws of rebit, of usury, of lending with interest. This doesn't sound godly at all. This sounds like something that a man would want from humanity, but this is not. Judaism is much more profound. It's not just a religious doctrine. It's a societal doctrine. It wants to build a society that has equity in it, where things are equitable, where people feel some feeling of equality. There has to be some feeling of equality, otherwise society begins to fall apart. So I'll give you my shal. There's a story that is told of these two amazing artists. And there's a competition, and they want to see which one's greater. So they both erect a curtain around their canvas, and they spend a week painting. They have a week to paint, and now comes the moment of truth. They're going to unveil this portrait, and they want everyone to see it. So what ends up happening is the first guy goes, and he drew a basket of grapes, and as he unveils the curtain, the basket looks so real that there are little birds that come and try to grab the grapes off the canvas, right? And everyone's blown away, like, holy cow, this guy is such an amazing artist that he was able to fool the animals, the birds, and thinking that they were real. So the second artist says, wow, he's like, you for sure won. Don't even bother, looking at mine. Don't even bother unveiling my portrait. There's no way I'm beating this guy. He's just way too good. Mine's never gonna look like that. So they said, no, you spend a week, you're still one of the greatest artists. Let's see what you produced during these 7 days. So the judge goes up to pull the curtain, and he realizes that what he was painting for those 7 days was a curtain. And it was so real that it even fooled the judges that were there. So wow, the first guy, he was such a great artist, he was able to fool the animals. But the second guy, he was able to fool humans. Now, this is the nature of fooling a human being. You can't fool them for too long, right? If I do something, I could try to use illusion to try to tell you that I have magical powers. I could trick you into something, but it doesn't last very long. Eventually, people will figure it out. But you know the ultimate artist is? The Tzayar meets Sur Kelokenu, who is like the Tzayar, the artist like God, where he creates a world that is projecting a type of reality that is not a true expression of reality. It's projecting a reality that is a false reality. We say the world, olam, comes from the words ne'elam, which means hidden. The world is not expressing a truth. And therefore, something like Shabbat, something like Shmita, is there as an exercise to help us reconfigure what is true. This concept, by the way, is expressed most beautifully during Sukkot. What's the function of Sukkot? Why do we have to sit in a sukkah for 7 days? So what do the Chachamim tell us? You got to sit in the sukkah because you're about to walk into the winter months. It's going to get cold. And you might start thinking that the home that you're in is protecting you from the elements. That the space that you're living, your abode, is where your security comes from. And therefore, there is a holiday where we go through this rehabilitation process, where we sit in a hut that can collapse at any moment, as a way of us working on our emunah that's not the house, it's really God. What is Shabbat? Shabbat is a testament to our belief, our faith. How committed are you to your beliefs? Is this something that is true, or is it, I pick and choose. I pick and choose the things that I like. But the Parsha is reminding us, my friends, that this isn't just a book written by mortals. This wasn't like, when I was a campus rabbi, I would often think, because this is the way I thought, I know what Judaism is. Judaism was a bunch of rabbis sitting in a cave in the desert, and they were twiddling their thumbs. Like, what kind of religion can we come up with to enslave the people, right? And And let's come up with a law. Yeah, let's do tefillin. Let's get men to wear leather straps on their arms. And let's force women to go to a ritual bath once a month. And let's limit their diet and let them only eat kosher food. And let's do this thing called Shmita, where every 7 years they leave the land fallow, they do nothing to it, and we'll promise them that they'll get 3 years worth of produce after that. This for sure will get people to follow our laws. Yeah, let's get men to cut their foreskin and go through a Brit Milah. Let's do whatever we can to, imprison these people forever. And I want you to know, for me, that's how I interpreted so much of my own beautiful faith. And as I got older and I got wiser, I realized, this religion would not have much longevity, if this is what these people were thinking, right? Like, if I was creating a religion, it would feel more like Christianity. Something that makes you feel good all the time, something that you don't have to think about too much, it's in the background, it doesn't take too much space and time. You do whatever you were doing before. But Judaism demands a level of excellence, right? Im bechukatai telechu. If you walk in my path, right? God is asking us to make a choice. There's two kinds of people. There's the people that think they know, right? And there's the people that have humility that recognize they don't know. And those people generally recognize that there's a higher power that is working things. Okay, I'll give you an example. I learned with a gentleman, and we were doing Perkei Avot. And we were up to the Mishnah in Perkei Avot, where Hillel says, Havu mitamidav shel Aharon, be a student of Aaron. Ohev shalom, rodef shalom, love peace, pursue peace, right? Ohev the briot, love the creations of the universe, umakarm Torah, and bring them closer to Torah. So he says to me, Rabbi, I don't understand. He's like, Hillel was just a smart guy. He has 1,000 years of history from Moses to him. Why is he choosing Aaron? Aaron was a failure, he said. And I'm like, why do you think Aaron was a failure? He's like, well, his sons died. They weren't good Jews. I said, who says that the mark of a successful Jew is what his children do? I'm not in control of what my kids do. No matter if I was the best father in the world and I did everything right, I'm not in control of my children. And I said more than that, in a relationship between husband and wife, I could do everything right. Every word, every action could be perfect, but somehow my wife could misunderstand it, misinterpret it, and it could be really painful, right? I'm not in control of I'm only in control of my response, I'm not in control of the outcome, right? That is the Torah. The Torah is teaching us that Aharon was great. He did everything he was supposed to do as a father, as a leader, and so on and so forth. Did he make mistakes? Yeah. Because he's human. That's what I love about the Torah. It's human beings. But this Pasha is a reminder that there's something above humanity that's happening here. Because if I want something to endure, I would never create a law that could easily be disproven. I would never write something down that could say, well, I could disprove this very easily. All I got to do is wait my 60th year to the 6th year, leave the 7th year fallow, and if I don't get 3 years worth of produce, then clearly whoever wrote this doesn't know what they're talking about, and the whole thing is a sham. But the Torah constantly does this. It constantly does things where it reminds me, hey, there's something here, there's someone that's sharing information that's coming from a higher power. What does this Parsha want from us? Sometimes it wants us to let go. My friends, we're not in control. You're not in control. The only thing you need to do is be honest about who you are and be clear about what you believe in. And then don't look back. Keep moving forward. Do what you got to do. Go where you got to go, but stop making excuses. Be honest about what you believe in. Be honest about how far your belief will take you. And if you're stuck, find someone to help you move beyond it. But stop playing games. That's for children. To be an adult means that I accept my truth and I live my truths, even though it's hard and uncomfortable. Parsha is telling you the laws are from God. We're talking about an infinite being that knows better than me and you what I should and should not be doing, how I should be running my business. Come on, Rabbi, what's the big deal? Why the Torah says, it's limiting my business. I lend money. Why can't I make money on interest? Torah says, fine. You know what? Chachamim said we understand that. It's more important for there to be a system where people are lending money, so we'll create something called heter iska. Heter iska means that now I'm buying into your business, and instead of me collecting interest from you, you're giving me a dividend from your company. That's not interest. We found the way around it. But the Torah understands human nature. Human nature is such where if something is not convenient to me, I'm out. Now, Let's pause for a second, and I'll end with this following idea I want you to think about. You and I are living in a very modern society, but we come from people who lived in the old world. If you go back to our great-grandparents, it would have been so much easier for them to just assimilate, let go of their Judaism, drop all of their beliefs, stop fighting. Come on, who wants that? Just live life, go on vacation, chill. But our ancestors fought vigorously for their faith and belief so that you and I can have a connection to something called truth. It never ever occurred to them that what we as Jews practice, celebrate, worship, honor, support was something that was fictitious. They always understood there was an element of truth here. Do you know why? Because they were maminim, they were believers. They knew how to let go. They knew they weren't in control. But the only one thing that they were in control of was their action, their response, my ability to respond to you. Am I going to smile or am I going to be depressed? Am I going to be honest or am I going to cheat? The simple things define our reality. Your thoughts, your words, your beliefs. Parsha is telling you, my friends, you know what? Judaism, I say this all the time, it wasn't designed for losers. I hate to say it. It was designed for winners. It was designed for peak performers that want to live a life of greatness and excellence. If you're finding yourself struggling with it, it's because you're struggling in other areas of your lives. The Torah demands excellence because there's an infinite being that wants you to be infinitely great. And if you're here, it's because you have the power of doing it. Stop being distracted. Stop allowing yourself to get in the way of yourself. Take ownership of who you are. But most importantly, the Parsha is about hope. Parsha is about that things reset themselves, that things aren't always stuck, that God has a plan, that no matter where you find yourself in, you could break out of it. All you got to do sometimes is let go and let God. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of happiness, a Shabbat of freedom, where you could actually let go, a Shabbat with the recognition that what we're doing as Jews is beautiful, it has meaning, and that there's a guy in the sky who I promise you, with all your ancestors, are smiling down at you, and they're rooting you on, they're cheering for you to keep pushing, keep doing what is right. Looking forward to continuing our conversation with Hashem next week. Shabbat Shalom.